Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart, Jeremiah 1:5. So if you're wondering why your life has never felt normal, why your pain runs deeper, your nights feel longer, and your soul feels older than your age, it's because you were never meant to live like everyone else. You were known before time, marked before birth, set apart for something holy, and that kind of calling doesn't come wrapped in comfort. It comes wrapped in silence, in struggle, in fire. You don't inherit greatness, you are carved into it, shaped by pain, refined in secret, prepared in the wilderness where no one claps, but heaven watches, because the chosen ones don't start on stages. They start in shadows, and while others inherit wealth, you inherit warfare, not because you're cursed, but because you're called. God doesn't bless you to impress people. He blesses you to break chains, to shift generations, to carry light into the places where others only saw darkness. But first, He takes you through the dark so you'll know how to lead others out. That's why your path has been so different. That's why you've been misunderstood. That's why you've had to earn everything in silence, because you are one of the few, one of the hidden, one of the chosen. You were never meant to fit in. And deep down, you've always known that. Since you were young, there's been this quiet sense inside you, a knowing that you were not like the rest. Not because you were better, not because you were special in the way the world defines special, but because you were called to carry something heavier, called to walk through things most people never will, called to become something far beyond what anyone could see. You didn't grow up with ease. You didn't get the soft version of life. You got the sharp edges, the closed doors, the silence when you cried out for help, the loneliness in rooms full of people. And you've asked God so many times, why me? Why is my path so heavy, so painful, so quiet? But what you didn't know was that God wasn't ignoring you. He was preparing you. Because before He ever uses someone publicly, He breaks them privately before He gives you the promise. He teaches you the pain before He reveals your calling. He refines your character. You see, you weren't just thrown into fire. You were forged in it while others inherited peace. You inherited purpose, and purpose is never light. The chosen ones are not born into comfort. They're born into chaos, into dysfunction, into spiritual warfare they don't even recognize at first. But even in that darkness, even when everything seemed lost, there was always a light inside you that never went out. A tiny flicker, a voice, a presence. You didn't have the words for it as a child, but now you know it was God. It was Him whispering, protecting, guiding you even when you ran the other way, because He knew when the time was right, you'd come back, and when you did, you wouldn't be the same. You'd be stronger, wiser, sharper, and more compassionate than anyone around you, because pain either makes you bitter or it makes you holy, and you chose the narrow road, the one where you don't just survive, you transform. People see you now and think you're quiet. They don't know that you fought demons in silence. That would have crushed them. They call you sensitive, but they don't understand. Your sensitivity is spiritual. You feel everything because your spirit is awake. You notice what others ignore. You sense what others deny. You walk into rooms and feel the weight people carry, not because you're weak, but because God gave you the gift of spiritual discernment. You weren't just meant to go through things, you were meant to overcome them, so you could lead others out of them too. The pain wasn't punishment, it was training. The delays weren't rejections, they were redirections. God wasn't ignoring you, He was hiding you, because what He placed inside you was too sacred to be exposed too soon. He needed you to grow roots in secret, to learn in the silence, to worship in the wilderness, to become unshakable before He revealed you. So don't envy their comfort. Don't compare your timeline. What you're building with God will last far beyond their noise. Because you're not building for applause, you're building for eternity. And yes, it's hard, it's lonely, it's invisible at times, but the anointing on your life requires that. The weight you carry isn't ordinary, so your journey never could be. Chosen ones are always called from the margins, from the pain, from the wilderness, just like Moses, just like David, just like Jesus. He didn't come wrapped in royalty. He came through the womb of a teenage girl in a stable. He was misunderstood, rejected, accused, and still he fulfilled his calling. You are walking a similar road, and though the world may never understand you, heaven knows your name. Every tear you cried in secret was seen. Every time you broke down and still got back up, it was recorded. Every prayer you whispered in the dark, he heard it. He's been with you the entire time. You're not behind. You're being positioned. You're not forgotten. You're being refined. You're not broken. You're becoming unbreakable because what God is about to do through you will silence every lie ever spoken over you. So keep walking, keep building, keep praying, even when it's quiet, especially when it's quiet, because the silence is where the chosen grow. It's where intimacy with God is cultivated. It's where purpose is born. And when the time is right, He will make everything clear. Not with noise, not with fireworks, but with fruit. You will bear fruit from the seasons you thought were wasted. You will harvest blessings from the tares you sowed in private. You will carry power from the places where you once felt powerless. That's the mark of the chosen. They don't just succeed. They transform. They don't just rise. They resurrect, and one day, when they ask how you did it, you'll smile and say, God did it, but He did it in silence. And He chose me even when I didn't choose myself. The chosen ones don't wear crowns. They carry crosses. They don't arrive with trumpets. They arrive with scars, and those scars aren't signs of defeat. They are marks of survival, proof that they've walked through hell and kept walking. You won't recognize them by status, by clothes, or by applause. You'll recognize them by their eyes, eyes that have seen too much, eyes that carry stories they never told, eyes that still shine even after the storm. They're not loud, not boastful, not desperate for attention, because they've already had enough attention. From pain, from trauma, from betrayal, they've learned that peace is more valuable than popularity. Silence is louder than validation. And purpose doesn't need to prove itself. The chosen ones often walk alone, not because they want to, but because their spirit outgrows their environment. They try to stay, they try to shrink, they try to fit in. But eventually, something inside them refuses to be small. That something is the Spirit of God. It will not let them settle. It will not let them compromise. It will whisper, pull, push, and even break them, just to lead them back to who they were created to be. People will call them intense, too emotional, too quiet, too different, but that's because the chosen ones are designed for a higher frequency. They live in a realm that most people can't feel. They're tuned into something deeper and more eternal. They don't chase fame, they seek impact. They don't seek to impress, they desire to heal. When they speak, you feel it, not because their words are perfect, but because their spirit is aligned. They carry wisdom beyond their age, compassion beyond explanation, and fire that doesn't burn out. Even when they're tired, even when they're discouraged, even when they feel like quitting. Because what fuels them isn't ego, it's calling. It's divine assignment. God placed something in them that won't let them give up, and even when they fall, they don't fall apart, they fall forward. People see the strength, but they don't see the price. They don't see the nights they wept on their bedroom floor, asking God if they were crazy, asking if the calling was real, asking why they feel everything so deeply. They don't see the relationships lost, the friends who walked away, the battles fought in silence, with no one cheering them on, only God. But those moments, those dark, brutal, lonely moments, are where the chosen are shaped, where the oil is crushed, where the voice becomes pure, where the heart becomes soft, but the soul becomes steel, and it's in that place that God begins to reveal what was hidden, not the success, not the spotlight, but the depth, the power, the clarity, the anointing. They don't chase platforms. Platforms come to them when the time is right. Because God doesn't promote based on popularity. He promotes based on preparation. And when the chosen one is ready, he doesn't just open doors. He builds rooms around them. The world starts to notice. But the chosen, they stay grounded. Because they remember the wilderness, the silence, the breaking. They don't need to prove themselves because their fruit speaks for them. And fruit doesn't argue, it just grows. That's how you know someone is truly chosen, not by their words, not by their followers, but by the legacy they leave when no one's watching. They serve when no one claps, they pray when no one sees. They give even when it costs them everything, because their reward isn't in this world. It's in eternity. So if you've ever wondered, am I one of the chosen? Look at your life, not your bank account. Not your followers, not your comfort. Look at your wounds, your fire, your faith, your fight. Have you been crushed but not destroyed? Have you been rejected but still kind? Have you walked through fire and come out wiser? Then yes, you're one of them, not because you said it, not because others confirmed it, but because God has marked you long before you ever knew his name. And no matter how many times you've doubted, run, fallen, or questioned, his mark remains, his hand remains, his love remains, because once God chooses you, he never changes his mind. The world has confused wealth with worth, but true wealth was never about what you have, it's about who you become. The chosen ones, they don't chase riches. They're taught to become the kind of soul that can carry blessings without being consumed by them, because wealth without wisdom is a curse in disguise, and wisdom is forged in fire. The journey of the chosen one isn't about getting more, it's about becoming more. More grounded, more patient, more surrendered, more connected to the eternal, not the temporary, you see. While the world shouts, get more, do more, be more, heaven whispers, let go, surrender, detach. It sounds strange, doesn't it? But this is an ancient truth, one echoed not just in scripture, but in the teachings of awakened masters. In the words of the Buddha, desire is the root of all suffering. And it's true, because when you're bound by desire, you become a prisoner to outcomes. But when you live with purpose, you become free. The chosen ones learn this the hard way. They desire approval and get rejection. They desire comfort and get chaos. They desire love and are met with silence. Not because they're cursed, but because they're being cleansed, because every unmet desire becomes a teacher, and in that teaching, they begin to see the truth that peace is the real wealth. Not cars, not homes, not numbers on a screen, but peace in the middle of uncertainty, stillness in the middle of storms, faith when nothing makes sense, and that kind of wealth cannot be inherited. It must be earned through pain, through patience, through 1,000 small deaths of the ego. The monastery doesn't just exist in the mountains, it exists in heartbreak, in betrayal, in the silence of a lonely room where the soul whispers. There must be more than this, and there is. But you have to go inward to find it, as the Buddha said. No one saves us but ourselves. No one can and no one may. We ourselves must walk the path. The chosen ones walk that path, step by painful step. But they're never truly alone, because the divine, whether you call it God, Source, or the Dharma, is always walking with them. Every prayer they thought went unanswered was actually received. Every lesson they thought was a punishment was a preparation. Every delay was protection. The truth is, God isn't trying to punish you. He's trying to purify you, to strip away the false self. so your true self can rise to remove the noise, so you can hear his voice to empty you of the world, so he can fill you with his purpose. And sometimes he even uses the teachings of the East to awaken what religion alone could not. Because truth is not bound to one book, it flows through all that is real, all that is eternal. The monk in the mountains and the prophet in the desert both seek the same thing: liberation, light, truth, God, and so do you. That's why you feel what you feel. That's why you've never fit in, because your soul knows. You weren't made to consume the world. You were made to illuminate it, so don't be ashamed of your hunger. Don't be ashamed of your journey. It's holy, it's rare. And though it costs you everything, it will give you more than you can imagine. But not the kind of more the world offers, not louder, not flashier, not faster, no, the kind of more that feels like less. Less fear, less noise, less need, and more stillness. More clarity, more presence, more love. So if you're still chasing wealth the way the world taught you, pause, ask your soul, what am I really seeking? And am I willing to let God redefine it? Because true wealth doesn't fill your pockets. It frees your spirit, and those who are truly chosen don't inherit it, they awaken to it. They surrender to it, they become it, one breath at a time, one prayer at a time, one quiet, faithful step at a time. You want to know what true wealth is? It's not made of gold. It doesn't glitter, it doesn't shout. It's made of hours, of choices, of discipline done in silence. It's built in moments no one sees. When you choose prayer instead of panic, patience instead of pressure, obedience instead of opinion, the chosen ones don't rise overnight. They rise in obscurity, in shadows, in silence. They build when no one's clapping. They show up when no one's watching. They speak faith when the world only sees failure. Because the wealth they're building isn't just for themselves. It's for generations. It's for legacy. It's for God, and so God teaches them how to build slowly, quietly, righteously. He teaches them how to fast, how to wait, how to break their own ego before they ever break through ceilings. He teaches them to walk away from comfort so they can walk toward calling, to leave behind shallow friendships so they can walk with depth, to stop chasing likes and start chasing light. This kind of building feels lonely, feels heavy, feels endless, but it's not meaningless. As the Buddha once taught, a jug fills drop by drop. That's how the chosen build, drop by drop, brick by brick, prayer by prayer. Not with speed, with surrender, not with noise, with knowing. They don't talk about it, they embody it. Their lifestyle becomes their sermon. Their silence becomes their strength. And yes, they get tired, yes, they doubt. Yes, they sometimes ask God, is this worth it? But every time, God whispers back, stay the course, I am with you. And so they continue, they wait before the world. They say no when others say yes. They give when they have little, they serve without applause. Because they're not building for vanity, they're building for eternity. This is how God refines wealth. Not by giving it to you, but by shaping you, until you become the kind of vessel that can carry it without being crushed. That's why it's hard. That's why it's slow. That's why you feel like you're walking through fire, because you are. But it's not just any fire, it's holy fire. It's purify, it's preparing. To the world, it looks like you're stuck. But to heaven, you're being seasoned, sanctified, strengthened, and one day, the very thing you thought was delaying you will become the foundation that sustains you, because when God builds, He doesn't build fast, He builds forever. And He doesn't just give you things. He makes you someone unshakable, someone trustworthy, someone ready. And when that time comes, you won't need to strive. You won't need to chase. You won't need to force. The blessings will come not as a reward, but as a responsibility you've already been trained to carry. That's the difference between the chosen and the comfortable. The comfortable want wealth to avoid pain. The chosen embrace pain to build wisdom. The comfortable seek escape. The chosen seek endurance. The comfortable want results. The chosen want righteousness, and that's why they last. Why they lead, why they leave legacy, because they didn't just ask God for a crown. They let Him teach them how to carry the cross first. You don't need someone to tell you that you're different, because you've always known. From the time you were a child, you felt things deeper. You saw things others didn't see. You asked questions that made adults uncomfortable. And you were never satisfied with shallow answers. That's the first sign you've always carried depth, a depth that couldn't be explained. Only felt you didn't belong, not in your family, not at school, not in social circles, no matter how hard you tried. There was a sense of distance, like you were on the outside, looking in. But that distance wasn't rejection. It was separation, divine setting apart. Because the chosen must be called out before they are sent out. You may have faced trauma, early loss, abandonment, betrayal. Things that should have broken you, but instead, they built something in you. A kind of resilience that can't be taught, only lived. You didn't just survive, you absorbed the pain and turned it into perspective. That's another sign. You carry wisdom far beyond your age. You know things without being taught. You feel shifts in the atmosphere. You see behind the words people say. And you sense when someone's spirit is heavy, even if they're smiling. You're not judgmental, you're discerning. Because God gave you eyes to see in the spirit. What others can't see with the flesh, it's not a gift you asked for. Sometimes it feels like a burden, but it's also your protection. Because while others get lost chasing the world, you get called back to something deeper. Another sign you crave solitude. Not because you hate people, but because your spirit needs quiet. To stay aligned to much noise, and you start to feel off. Disconnected, drained, so you retreat. You go into hiding, you rest. You listen, you realign, and every time you come back, you're clearer, stronger, sharper. That's how the chosen regenerate. In stillness, in silence, in sacred isolation. Have you noticed how, when you try to settle for less, something inside you starts to ache? That's not guilt, that's purpose knocking. Calling you higher, refusing to let you shrink. That's another sign you can't unknow your calling. Even when you try to ignore it. Even when you run, even when you mess up. It's still there, a fire that never fully dies. A voice that never goes silent. You try to live a normal life. But normal doesn't fit you anymore because your soul remembers. What your mind tries to forget, you were made for more. And then, there's the timing. Things don't happen for you like they do for others. You don't get the easy doors. You get the divine delays, the divine detours. The no that turns into a better yes later. Why? Because God isn't rushing you. He's preparing you, and the chosen are always trained differently. He hides you, he humbles you, he isolates you, because what he's building in you requires more than talent. It requires character, stamina, surrender, if you've ever felt like you were being crushed from every direction. That's another sign, because the olive must be crushed. To release oil, and the chosen must be crushed. To carry glory, you don't just carry light. You carry healing. You walk into rooms and shift atmospheres. Not because of who you are, but because of who walks with you. That's the final sign. God never leaves you. Even when you fall, even when you doubt, even when you curse the sky and ask him why. He's still there, quiet, patient. Waiting because he knows you're not done yet. You're just getting started. Let's talk about loneliness. Not the kind you feel when you're alone, but the kind you feel when you're surrounded by people who don't understand your soul. That kind of loneliness is sacred. It's the loneliness of the chosen, of the awakened, of the ones being called into something deeper you used to fit in until you grew, until you started seeing beyond the surface, until God began revealing things to you that others weren't ready to see. And suddenly, the people you once laughed with felt distant, the places you once loved felt empty, the conversations that used to excite you now drain you. Why? Because you changed. And every spiritual awakening comes with a shedding old beliefs, old habits, old versions of you, and sometimes even old relationships. That's the cost no one talks about. Yes, you gain clarity. Yes, you feel more connected to God, but you also lose people. People who only knew the older version of you. People who liked you better when you were smaller, quieter, less sure of yourself. And that loss hurts. You wonder, why is this path so lonely? Why do I feel further away from the people I love? But here's the truth. You're not being punished. You're being purified. God is removing distractions. He's clearing the noise. He's cutting cords that kept you tied to an identity you've outgrown. The Buddhist monks teach that attachment is the root of all suffering, and it's true, because we often hold on to people who were only meant to teach us for a season. We make them permanent in our hearts. When they were temporary in our journey, and when they leave, we feel like we've failed, but in truth, we've evolved. This loneliness is not emptiness, it's space for the new, for deeper connections, for divine alignment. But before the new can come, you must sit in the space where the old has left. It's uncomfortable, it's disorienting. It feels like exile, but even Jesus had to go into the wilderness before he stepped into his calling. 40 days alone, hungry, tempted, tested. Why? Because isolation comes before elevation. The wilderness teaches you who you are without applause, without validation, without anyone else's voice in your head. It strips you down so only the truth remains. And in that truth, you find something holy. God, raw, real, and filtered. You don't need a preacher. You don't need a temple. You don't even need words. You just need silence and surrender. That's why the loneliness is sacred. It leads you back to the source, to yourself, to your center, to the one who called you before you had a name. And when you finally stop resisting it, you begin to see you're not alone. You're just in transition. From false to truth, from noise to clarity, from attachment to alignment. And yes, there is a cost. There's always a cost. To become who you're meant to be, you'll have to let go of. Who you thought you were, you'll have to grieve. You'll have to forgive. You'll have to sit with silence until it speaks. But what you gain is far greater than what you lose. You gain vision. You gain power. You gain peace. The kind of peace that doesn't leave when people do. That doesn't depend on circumstances. That doesn't shatter when life gets hard. The peace that comes from knowing I am exactly where I need to be. Even if I'm alone, even if I'm misunderstood, even if no one claps, God sees, and I'm walking with Him. So if you're feeling lonely right now, if you've been losing friends, if you're in that in-between space, where nothing feels familiar anymore, take a deep breath. You're not lost. You're being recalibrated. You're not behind. You're being aligned. You're not abandoned. You're being awakened, because the chosen must walk through isolation to learn how to carry revelation. And once you come out of this season, you won't just recognize yourself. You'll know, without a doubt, you are never alone, not for a second. After the silence, after the breaking, after the isolation, there comes a moment where something begins to shift, not outside of you, but within. You stop running, stop pretending, stop forcing, and you finally sit with yourself. No distractions, no masks, no noise, just you and the breath, and God, and in that stillness, You begin to hear a voice you had long forgotten. Not the voice of the world. Not your ego, not fear, but your soul. Pure, honest, unfiltered. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg, it just whispers. I'm still here. That voice is your true self. The one God created. The one the world tried to bury. The one you silenced. To fit in, to survive, to please. And now it's rising again, but this time, you don't run from it, you lean in. Because now you know the way forward is inward. You begin to ask deeper questions. Who am I without the titles? Who am I without their approval? Who am I when no one's watching? And the answers don't come in words. They come in peace, in clarity, in knowing. You realize you don't need to become anything. You just need to return to what you've always been. The world taught you to strive, but God calls you to surrender. The world told you to compete, but your soul seeks alignment. The world shouts, be more, but heaven whispers, just be. And in that being, you begin the reconstruction, brick by brick. You rebuild your inner temple, not for show, but for strength. You learn to wake with purpose, not panic, to speak with intention, not insecurity, to rest without guilt, to move without proving. You set boundaries. You protect your peace, you honor your energy. Not because you're selfish, but because you're sacred. And you finally remember that. You don't chase anymore, you attract what aligns. You don't beg for love, you become love. You don't fear solitude, you crave it, because that's where God speaks loudest. As the Buddha once said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without, and Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you, two paths, one truth. You are never broken, only buried, and now. You are rising, not with noise, not with force, but with quiet certainty. Because now you know. You don't need to do more to be worthy. You already are. You were chosen, not because of what you could produce, but because of what you carry. What you are, so you walk differently now. Slower, softer, more aware. You no longer rush into rooms. To prove you belong, you enter with presence. And your presence says everything. You listen more than you speak. You observe before you act. And you pause often to check in with your soul. You no longer live from survival. You live from center, from spirit, from truth. And that's where your real power is, not in being the loudest, not in being the most successful, but in being the most aligned with God, with love, with peace, with purpose. And when you're aligned, you don't have to chase blessings. They come quietly, consistently, without effort, because they recognize your energy, and energy never lies. So if you're rebuilding from the inside out, stay with it. It's working. You're not becoming someone new. You're becoming who you've always been. And the more you return to your true self, the more everything else starts falling into place. So now you know. You were never broken. You were becoming. You were never abandoned. You were being positioned. You were never lost. You were being led by something far greater than you understood at the time, because what the world called delay, heaven called preparation, what people called failure, God called formation. And all this time, you thought you were being forgotten, when in fact you were being hidden for a purpose, hidden for protection, hidden until you were ready to carry the weight, ready to shine without pride, ready to lead without ego, ready to speak from the silence you once feared, because silence is no longer your enemy. It's your birthplace. It's where you met God, where you met your true self, where you were stripped down to your soul and rebuilt from truth. That silence wasn't empty. It was sacred. It was loud with lessons, rich with revelation, and now it's your power. You speak differently now, move differently, love differently, because you've been through something sacred. And you came out not bitter, but better. You no longer need permission. You no longer seek applause. You no longer explain your calling to those who don't carry your fire. Because chosen ones don't need to be understood. They only need to be obedient, and you're ready. Ready to build what God whispered in the dark. Ready to walk the path you once thought was too painful. Ready to lead with love even when it costs you everything. Ready to rise not for attention, but for assignment, because there are people waiting on your obedience. There are souls waiting on your healing. There are generations tied to your voice, your presence, your light. You are not here by accident. You are here by design. Your story is not random. It is written, and the author. He is faithful. He wastes nothing, not one tear, not one betrayal, not one moment of pain. It was all part of the preparation. Now you rise not in arrogance, but in reverence, not to prove anything, but to become everything God saw when He first formed you in the secret place. This is your time, not to shout, but to show. Not to compete, but to carry, not to perform, but to fulfill. You are one of the chosen, and everything you went through was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to reveal you. Now stand, not with noise, but with knowing. Walk, not with fear, but with fire and love. Not from emptiness, but from the overflow of who you've become. Because when God chose you, He didn't choose your perfection. He chose your potential. He chose your willingness. He chose your yes. And now it's your turn to walk in everything. You were always meant to be quietly, powerfully, faithfully, in truth, in grace, in purpose. You are not just surviving. You are becoming. You are not just chosen. You are called. So if something in you was stirred today, if a part of you whispered, "This is me," then don't ignore it. Don't silence it. That whisper may just be your soul remembering who you truly are. You're not here by accident. You didn't find this video by chance. You were guided here because you were ready to remember. You are chosen, and now I want to hear from you. Have you felt this calling before? Have you walked through the silence, the breaking, the becoming? Share your story in the comments. Not for attention, but because your voice may heal someone else. This space is sacred. It's not just a video. It's a gathering of the chosen. And your words matter here. So type something below, even if it's just, "I'm one of them," because you are. And you're not alone anymore.